The Heritage January Medals and Tokens Showcase opens a cabinet of conviction and craft. Here are some of the highlights from that sale. In July of 1815, the man who had once bent Europe to his will stood upon the deck of the HMS Bellerophon and surrendered. After Waterloo ended his final bid for power, Napoleon Bonaparte fled towards the Atlantic, hoping for passage to the Americas. Instead, he delivered himself into the awaiting hands aboard the HMS Bellerophon. The voyage would not lead to refuge, but instead to a permanent exile on St. Helena. This stunning medal fixes that moment in cold bronze. The obverse presents Napoleon in uniform, composed but diminished. The reverse shows the HMS Bellerophon under full sail, the very ship that bore him away from power and towards exile. Struck in 1820, the piece transforms political drama into narrative art. Graded as MS65 Brown by NGC, it realized $915 at final call. In 1702, England struck not only at armies but at treasure as well. Off the coast of Spain, at Vigo Bay, an Anglo-Dutch fleet attacked a French and Spanish convoy heavy with silver from the New World. The victory was swift and lucrative, captured bullion helping to finance Queen Anne's struggle against Bourbon France. This bronze medal commemorates that triumph. These were not private souvenirs, they were statements of maritime ascendancy. Most surviving examples show wear from 3 centuries of handling. To encounter one graded as MS65 Brown, the finest certified by NGC, is exceptional. It was sold at auction for $1,769. In October of 1727, a new king took the throne not by conquest but by succession. George II inherited a crown already tested by revolution and union, ruling a Britain that was expanding its commercial and political reach across the globe. John Croker's Coronation Medal captures that moment of transfer with deliberate symbolism. The obverse presents the draped and laureate bust, authority coached in the classical Roman code. The reverse stages the ceremony itself, George seated upon the throne, holding both orb and scepter, as Britannia lays the crown on his head. The Latin legend, volentes por populos, loosely invokes the idea of the consent of the governed, or by the will of the people, more directly. A reminder that by this time in history, legitimacy was as much political theater as divine right. Struck in silver, this is a medal meant to mark continuity. Nearly 3 centuries on, it still reads as it was intended. A kingdom, steady, a monarch affirmed. Graded by NGC as an outstanding MS64, it was sold at auction for $2,257. Before London was a skyline of steel and glass, it governed itself beneath carved oak and painted ceiling. The Guildhall itself was not merely a building, it was the ceremonial heart of the city, where commerce and crown and civic power dressed itself in floral pageantry. In 1884, the new council chamber opened its doors. The occasion demanded more than merely speeches. The monumental bronze medal struck for the City of London series answered that call. Limited to just 400 pieces, the obverse is architectural splendor, a precise interior view of the chamber itself, framed by inscriptions marking its opening on the 2nd of October 1884. The reverse shifts then from architecture to allegory. At its center stands Londinia, the female embodiment of the city of London. She stands in command, addressing her assembled council. To one side is Mercury, the Roman god of trade and communication. On the other stands a figure of commerce itself, reinforcing London's identity as a mercantile capital. Beneath them lies the crossed civic sword and mace, the traditional symbols of the city's legal and judicial authority, binding both myth and municipal power into a single composition. Graded by PCGS as SP65, it managed to sell at auction for $2,318. In 1915, war was no longer confined to the trenches alone. It raged in newspapers, posters, and even metal. Germany's satirical engraver, Karl Gutz, turned his tools into weapons of propaganda. His Pact of Malice medal is propaganda cast in bronze. The obverse shows a multi-headed beast, the Allied powers, fused into a single monstrous form, nursing destruction. It is weaponized allegory. The reverse is blunt, almost violent in tone. Strike him down. The world's judgment will not ask for your reason. Above the inscription is a grim figure in the clouds holding a raised sickle. Gutz's medals were meant to provoke, to harden resolve on the home front. Graded as MS64 brown by NGC, it was sold at auction for $2,684. 4 years later, Gutz again stood ready with allegory. After the Treaty of Versailles imposed peace on Europe, the blame fell squarely at Germany's feet. Germany lost territory and had to agree to crushing financial reparations. Many Germans saw the treaty not as peaceful reconciliation, but as humiliation and punishment. He captures that sentiment in this medal that he called Germany's Good Friday, though it is more commonly referred to today as Germany's Crucifixion Medal. We see Germania, the German equivalent of Lady Liberty, or Frances Marianne. She is shackled with her hands tied behind the back. Around her are members of Germany's own political factions, a social democrat offering vinegar to drink, an independent assigning blame, and a communist tearing at her clothes. A crowd behind them waves a banner reading General Strike, reflecting the unrest and chaos of 1919 Germany. The nation is not merely defeated, it is humiliated and divided against itself. On the reverse, the leaders of the victorious Allied nations, Britain's Lloyd George, France's Clemenceau, America's Woodrow Wilson, and Italy's Orlando, divide the globe like spoils of war. Above them, a flaming hand writes Bolshevism in the sky, a dire warning of growing communist revolution in Russia. Again, subtlety was never Gutz's style. If the Pact of Malice medal casts Germany as an avenging defender, then this medal inverts that to where Germany is turned to martyr, suffering unjustly, and carries a dire warning for the future. Completing our trilogy, in 1948, money itself became a casualty of conflict's aftermath. The Reichsmark had collapsed under inflation and black market barter. When the currency reform arrived in the Western zones, old notes were suddenly worthless, replaced overnight in an attempt to reset a shattered economy. Karl Gutz, again, reached for allegory as his trusted shield. In his 1948 currency devaluation medal, it distills that moment of financial rapture into bronze and carries the scale of accusation rather than commemoration. Goethe never treated economics as abstract policy. For him, it was rather a lived consequence. Graded as MS63 Brown by NGC, this example preserves the designer's sharp relief and sober tone, and achieved $1,830 at auction's close. In 1655, a child was born into a frontier world. The Ottoman threat pressed at Europe's edges, and Baden needed commanders more than courtiers. Ludwig Wilhelm would become both shield and symbol, forged in campaigns that defined his region's survival. He would not live to see the Peace of Rastatt in 1714, nor the full flowering of the castle that he commissioned, yet both would come to stand in his shadow. 3 centuries later, in 1955, Baden marked the 300th anniversary of his birth, not with ceremony alone, but with gold. Graded Proof 63 Ultra Cameo by NGC. This is not a medal of a single event, but of legacy. A region casting its defender in eternal gold. At auction, this medal saw a closing price of $10,980. Subscribe to WNN and feel free to watch another video about the coronation medal of Queen Anne next, right here. For the World Numismatic News, I am Numisman saying thank you for watching, keep collecting, and have a fantastic day.